Hey guys, it's Daniel here with my brand new style for my videos. Now, you may remember a month ago I reviewed The Walking Dead, and I found it a fantastic show. It was one of the best shows I've ever seen in my life. Sure, not everything is perfect, but I still found it a very awesome and wonderful series. It's awesome, it has gruesome imagery, it's fun, it's got likable characters, fantastic acting, great music, great suspense, and just everything is so awesome. And you want to know one of the most iconic parts about the show? The villains. The villains of the show are some of the most iconic I've ever seen in a TV show, because they both either come off as sympathetic and likable, or sympathetic and unlikable. Like, some of these people are just so unlikable when you first meet them. There are a few villains that I would like to talk about in this video that I really love, but it's mostly Negan I want to talk about. Yes, you may remember in my review of the show I talked about how Negan was my favourite character, but I couldn't really talk about why he's my favourite character without spoiling anything. But since this is a spoiler video, I can talk more into detail about Negan, why he's the best character. And that is a full spoiler warning. If you have not seen the Walking Dead yet, then do not watch this video, or else you're going to be spoiled for life. Because this is a 10-season show, probably the longest show I've ever seen. Okay, good? Okay, good. So, some of the main villains that I really want to talk about in the show include Shane, the Governor, Alpha, Beta, and of course, Negan. So, how do these villains hold up compared to other villains in other shows? Well, let's start off with Shane. Shane is probably the first ever human villain to appear in The Walking Dead. And what makes this even shocking is that first, he doesn't really start off as a villain. He just starts off as a more likable character who's a bit selfish but still very likable. I mean, after Rick ends up in the coma after getting shot, he takes care of Laurie and Carl while they think that Rick is dead. And since then, Laurie and Shane have started a little bit of a relationship because of Laurie thinking that Rick is dead. But once Rick comes back to them, she thinks that Shane is a liar. So Shane tries desperately hard to convince her that he's not a liar and that he's fine with everything that happened. But she won't accept him for who he is. So, almost come to the point where he almost, like, violates her in the TS19 episode. But she still won't accept him after she scrapes him, and he finally realizes, oh god, Rick shouldn't have come back. I was so happy with Laurie, it was so awesome. And then in season 2, he starts to crack even more and more once he learns that Herschel has been keeping walkers inside his barn, and Laurie continues to belittle him for who he is. And it comes to the point where he ends up snapping, and that's when he expresses to Rick that he wishes he was dead because he's a better father and a better husband or boyfriend to him. To the point where he actually tries to kill Rick at the end of season 2, which gave Rick no choice but to kill his bestest friend in the world that he thought was partners with him, and then learning that his best friend is betraying him, it breaks his heart, but he realizes that he has no choice. He realizes that humans can be big threats as well. And it comes down to Jon Bernthal's acting. He's such an iconic character. He does a good job playing a very menacing, despicable, yet kind of sympathetic villain, because again, he doesn't start off as a villain, because as more experiences happen later on, we do fearful of his actions, but we understand where he's coming from. He does come off as a very sympathetic villain. And honestly, I couldn't help but root for him to tell Laurie off for not letting him show his support that he has for her. We then meet the Governor in Season 3, who might not be the first human villain, but he's the first ever dictator villain in The Walking Dead. Before Negan, before Alpha, before any other dictators, like the leader of the Wolves and all that, he was the first ever leader of a army of fighters who go to war against Rick and his community. He's the leader of a town called Woodbury, which he believes is the safest place to be. You can see that he's a little out of his mind, but he doesn't really start off as a villain. Again, just like Shane, he starts off as a very, trying to keep people safe and all that. He has a few zombie heads in his room along with his zombie daughter, who he cares about, and even though he is out of his mind, he thinks that his zombie daughter is the closest family he has. But once Michonne ends up killing his daughter, he starts to crack. That's his first development into being a villain, as he attacks Michonne with full forces until Michonne uses the glass to stab him in the eye, which ends up getting him that wrap around his eye and later the eye patch. And he starts to go on a hunt for Michonne, where Andrea, who develops a little bit of a crush on the governor, starts to see his true intentions as she tries to get away from him. But the governor ends up catching her and sending her into a prison where she gets devoured by a walker. Then, when he attacks Rick's prison with his army, they fail, and so another sign into villainy, he kills all of his followers, and now he's on his own developing a new quest, where he meets Tara and a little family, where he starts to develop, and you kind of see that, okay, maybe he's becoming more of a good guy. I hope he turns into a good guy. And honestly, if you think back, you do kind of feel sorry for what he's went through, and you understand his actions. And you're kind of hoping that this family will develop him into a more understanding person. But that is until he kills one of the people at a camp that they come across, where you see, oh my god, his villainy is coming back. And then he attacks the prison with along with new followers and Tara. Rick tries to advise them that everything will be alright. We've all done terrible things just to stay alive, but we can still come back. We're not too far gone. And you wish, oh my god, come on, listen to Rick. You can still come back. I'm sorry about your daughter, but you can still come back. But then... What? No, Herschel, you killed Herschel? I thought you were a good guy. Why did you kill Herschel? No! Oh my god, the government, you're such an evil god. I hate you. Yeah, Rick, attack him. He doesn't deserve to live anymore. He's too far gone. I mean, it's not just the fact that he was too far gone, he will do anything it takes to survive. It's just that he killed Herschel. Herschel, who was such a likeable character who took care of Rick's family and was a good father to Beth and Maggie. What the absolute hell? So, when a villain has enough qualities to make you both hate and sympathise with him, you know the writers have done a great job. Now, I'm kind of going ahead here because my favourite villain is before this villain, but I'm going to skip to this villain first before I talk about my favourite villain. So, skipping ahead to Season 9, we meet the Whisperers, a group of people who are using zombie masks to disguise themselves as zombies to survive in the apocalypse, which I'm not going to lie, it's kind of a good idea. But the heart and meat of the Whisperers is its leader, Alpha, who is very subtle about her actions. She talks very quietly and doesn't speak like a loud, boisterous woman like other characters in the show. She's more quiet about her actions, but still confident in what she does.
What did I tell you about crossing my border? You have to be punished.
There's something mysteriously unnerving about this woman, because we don't know much about her. In the case of not knowing much about her, we kind of like not knowing much about her, because that's what makes this character so interesting. You're like, why is she doing this? How is she doing this? What's she going to do next? She has so many clever ideas too. But just like some of the other leaders, she's very stern about her community, because when someone gets out of line, she'll either get extremely subtly angry, or she might kill that others just to stay alive. Again, it's kind of like some other characters in the show, but she does come off as very interesting. And even though we don't know much about her, we still see a bit of her backstory about her becoming more of a leader and teaching her daughter how to do well. But she also very shamed about her daughter. But we do learn in an episode that she does have a soft spot for her daughter and wants to do anything to make her achievable. At one point, she's actually willing to sacrifice a baby. A baby! I mean, I know Negan is a horrible monster and all that, but he didn't sacrifice a baby. As a matter of fact, he kinda had a soft spot for babies. And Alpha was actually willing to let a baby die. But luckily, one of the Alexandria Hilltops people come and save us, so that's kind of good. But still, she was going to sacrifice a baby. Again, not knowing much about her past is very interesting. She's not the only leader of the Whisperers, that is very interesting. We also have her second in command, Beta. Just like Alpha, we don't know much about Beta. In fact, he gets even less backstory than Alpha. He's just a very tall guy who talks like a huge beast like character who doesn't speak a lot, but he's very loyal to Alpha after finding each other in the little hospital with each other, and he'll do anything to make sure that Alpha's commands are ordered. So once Alpha is killed off by Negan, spoiler alert, Beta kind of becomes the main antagonist of the second half of season 10. He's the loyal follower to Alpha and would do anything for her, as well as doing like very disagreeable things to her just to keep her satisfied. Once Alpha is killed off, he sets off on a revenge story to avenge Alpha's death. And that's what makes him so interesting as well. He's kind of like a bigger threat than Alpha because of his immense size, his confident fighting skills. I mean, when he's fighting Daryl, he's very good with knives, and Daryl is just like being dragged about. He's just tossing Daryl all over the place, and you're like, oh my god, this guy, he means business. All of this builds up to the main focus of this video, me talking about the ultimate Walking Dead antagonist, or at least what the second half of season 6 has been building up as the ultimate Walking Dead antagonist, the one character who is probably the most biggest threat that Rick and his crew have ever faced, and what is, in my opinion, the best character and the best villain of the entire show, Negan. Negan is perfect foe that Rick has ever faced, as well as the perfect foe in the series, because he went from being the secondary focus next to Rick and his crew to the main focus, whereas with other villains before him have come off as secondary focuses to come off as a obstacle for our characters. But Negan almost feels like the real focus of season 7 and a little bit of season 8, but mostly season 7, while he was still a villain. And because there were so many characters in the show that have been developed and are very likable, it's only fair that our villain should be the link that tied them all together. He starts off from the most hateable, disgustful, harsh and cruel antagonist I've ever seen, into the most sympathetic and likable character in the entire series. Because there's a lot of, intensity when we first meet him. You see, for the second half of season 6, we meet many people who declare themselves as Negan, but they have real names and they've been called Negan because they follow Negan. These characters are the saviors, who are basically doing anything to survive. So they corner Rick's crew, but Rick's crew keeps on killing these saviors as they start killing them, and you can tell that it starts to take a call with Negan, or at least what we think is taking a harshful reaction from Negan. So his right-hand man Simon corners them and gets them inside the woods, where we finally meet Negan for the first time. He steps out with his van, and he has a very huge smile on his face, with a sarcastic anger inside of him when he first meets Rick, declaring that he was excited to meet them for the first time, but he's also very not cool with him killing his men. So, to teach him a lesson, he kills 2 people in his crew. Okay, maybe they're not going to turn out to be characters that I really love. I mean,
you're all going to be doing that.
Oh, Abraham. Abraham died. He's a fantastic character, but at least he was the only character that was killed. I mean, he's not going to kill someone. Wait, Daryl, what are you doing? Wait, no, don't punch him. He said he's going to shut that stuff down. If you exceptions, come on, don't. Wait. Okay, you're saying that he told you not to say anything. He said no exceptions. Is someone else going to die? Okay, maybe it's not going to be a huge character in the show. It's not going to be like a character that I have a huge connection to, and I'll be like, no, Glenn! What? You killed Glenn? What? Ugh, what? No, 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 Maggie, don't cry, don't cry, don't cry. No. You killed Glenn Ray! You monster! You... None of the other villains have ever started off as unlikable when we first meet them. But Negan throws a huge wrench in that category because he proves his skills when killing Glenn, one of the most lovable characters on the show, and they wouldn't even make it here if it wasn't for him. He felt like one of the real heroes of the show. So to see him die like that is heartbreaking. Especially heartbreaking with Maggie's reaction to it. And it makes us despise Negan for doing that. So, pretty much the first half of Season 7 is just Rick and his crew preparing stuff for Negan, proving that he is more powerful than they ever imagined, and Negan just taking all the fame and the glory. One of the things that makes him more interesting is his dialogue. He comes off with so many quotable quotes in this show that we kind of quote his quotes on a daily basis, especially his most iconic quote,
Little pig, let me in.
"Ooh, that's very sarcastically scary, yet funny." Or both. It was friggin' awesome. But he still has some very big confidence in what he does. After Rosita tries to shoot him, and instead shoots his bat, Lucille. And so he lets Olivia die, and so he goes off. And then Rick decides, you know what? Screw it, we're gonna kill him and his fellows. So basically the second half of Season 7 and all of Season 8 is basically the war between Alexandria and the Hilltop and the Oceanside against the Saviors. And these battles are such awesome because we see them both at different sides. I mean, at first we saw the Saviors having a huge advantage, but we praise Alexandria for rising to the top again and beating the Saviors, killing a lot of them. But we also kind of like seeing them spare most of the lives of the Saviors as well. But the most iconic battles in these seasons are the ones that we've been building up to. Rick versus Negan. These fights are very intense as well, and you see Negan trying to hold his own against Rick. And he starts off as very strong against Rick, and he has a lot of fun proving that he has all the power. But he starts to crack a little bit once he sees the Saviors are losing to the war. In Season 8, we see a bit of doubtful in his eyes, kind of worried that there's actually a chance that he may die, so now he is giving Alexandria everything he's got. It makes Negan at his most terrifying in Season 8. Once his battle ends, we see a little bit of his moral compass start to break once Rick tells Negan that Carl said that it doesn't have to be a fight anymore. But he starts to drop, he starts becoming weaker and starts letting in what Rick just said. And he doesn't have to tell Rick that he feels sorry about what happened, it's all shown right there on his face. And real quick, let's talk about Carl. So yeah, I definitely got emotional. It was very sad to see him leave the show, because Chandler Wiggs was such an iconic character, and plus he was a teenager in an apocalypse, so, oh my god. But if there's one thing I commence his death, it's the development of Negan, because instead of killing Negan, Rick just demoralizes his neck, but asks many characters to save him, because Carl thought of a vision of a future where Negan could help the community, and all the Saviors could help the community as well. So they keep Negan in a cell for about 7 years. He rots in it as punishment for his crimes. But then, throughout the 9th and 10th season, he starts to become more of an anti-hero. He bonds with Judith, helps Michonne find Judith, saves Judith from the characters. He defends Lydia from some of the characters, and he was probably the biggest hero of Season 10 for killing Alpha and breaking into the Whisperer's place and helping Carol kill Alpha for the death of her son. As we start seeing him become more of a good guy, we start to develop a more closer attached to him. We start to become safe with him. We start to become, like, prepared to fight with him. We start to prepare for him, like, hoping that he would survive this apocalypse. And that's a complete genius writing on the writer's behalf, because at first we wanted him dead from the get-go for killing Glenn, but we start seeing more of his deeds, and we don't forgive him for some of his past actions. But we start to understand, because after all this development, after all his succession of getting on with the good side with Alexandria, we get to his most developed episode, his Negan, the final episode of Season 10, which I have to say is probably the best final episode for a season of The Walking Dead ever. Because we never really cared about what his backstory was in the past because of what he's done. But as he starts to become more of a good guy, we feel like, okay, now we want to know what you've been through. And we learn that Lucille the Bat is actually named after Negan's real wife, Lucille. Lucille was dying due to a dose of cancer, so Negan has to keep a bunch of medicine and cures to keep his wife alive. And we see that he was more of a softer man deep down, acting more as a protector rather than a vicious animal. But he was then taken by a group of gangsters who want to know where the cure came from, and keeps Negan tied up until they let him go after he tells them where the cure is. But once he gets back to his house with the cure, it's too late for him, because his wife Lucille turns into a walker, and you see the pain inside of him as he starts crumbling down and then rises up to become the saviour Negan that we love and hated. He burns his house down, killing Lucille the Walker inside of it. He grabs the bat that was given to him by a woman named Laura, who would later go on to be a saviour for him, wraps it up with barbed wire, and creates Lucille the Bat. He kills the gangsters, and kills the leader of the gangster with complete joy as he starts off his first ever villain monologue. This episode truly changed my way for Negan, and it's the episode that made me realise that Negan was the best character in the show, in my opinion. Because, again, as we see his episode, his Negan, we start thinking back to his actions, and we start to realise that his motivations for doing these actions is that the death of Lucille really had an effect on him, and so he has no remorse anymore. He kills a bunch of people and puts together his own community of people. But as Rick starts killing more of his people, we see that he has a bit of fear that he's losing and that he will never be satisfied again. So he goes the most ruthless way of solution as possible by making Rick bow to his knees and giving him whatever he wants by killing both of his people, Abraham and Glenn. Again, we don't forgive him for his actions for killing Glenn, but after watching the final episode of Season 10, we think back and we realise that the way he talks, the way he moves, the way his expressions are going down, made us understand who he was, what his motivations were, and why he was doing what he was doing. And it's all fascinating, because there is joy about him killing people, but it's because killing people is what brings him back his joy. He used to have joy with Lucille. I mean, there was still a bit in him, but it's only after he makes Oceanside and Hilltop and Alexandria bow to his knees that he can experience it again. But he learns that he can still be a tough guy, but he needs to learn that violence isn't the answer, and that people can work together no matter where they come from or what their culture is. At the end of the day, we are all the same here on Earth. We are one. And it all boils down to the spectacular performance done by Jeffrey Dean Morgan. I never really saw a lot of Jeffrey Dean Morgan's performances, but he nails the performance as this character, because he adds to the whole unlikable, yet sympathetic charm of the character. And whenever he's given an emotional moment, he doesn't have to say anything. Jeffrey Dean Morgan just looks at the characters or the camera with a soft, understandable expression on his face. That is how you write a strong villain turned anti-hero. Make his motivations understandable by not letting us know who he was at first, because we never knew much about him at first. As he develops as a good character, we start to realise that we want to know more about him and why he did what he did. And once we do, it becomes even more satisfying. And this entire video has been building up to us feeling sorry for Negan and why he's, in my opinion, the best character of The Walking Dead. So those were my thoughts on the villains that I wanted to talk about in this video of The Walking Dead. And I hope you liked this video. I know this video has gone on for quite a long time, but I just had to talk a lot about Negan. So I hope you enjoyed this video. And also, please go watch my review of The Walking Dead. I mean, I'd expect fans of The Walking Dead to be able to get a lot of views on that video, so please go check these videos out, and I hope to get more done soon. Anyway, I'm Daniel, reviewing movies, TV shows, and doing videos. Until then, here we go, bounce. I am Jeffrey Dean Morgan. Till then, peace out, man.